what does the body need to feel safe?
So it was just easier, and we do this all the time, right? It was easier for me just to repress all of that, any type of sexual energy or drive I had. And then I thought for years that the reason she moved away was because I was a bad person because of what happened, right? And they're looking for that outcome. If that doesn't happen, then I'm not satisfied. If that doesn't happen, I haven't satisfied my partner.
Hello, and welcome back to Retrieving Sanity with our podcast host, Keegan, and this is your podcast for all mental health, addiction, recovery issues, and topics. I've got a question for you real quick. Do you like talking about sex? Do you like sex? Well, that's kind of the thing. I think a lot of us do to some regards, but a lot of us don't like talking about sex. However, Xanet Paylette, God, I almost had it the first time. Today, Paylette is here to talk to us all about sex. She is a sex and intimacy educator, a somatic experiencing trauma practitioner, a Tantra teacher, and the best-selling author of Living an Orgasmic Life, Heal Yourself and Awaken Your Pleasure. So we're going to dive into everything that we can, as much as we can within an hour, of course, because there's a lot to unpack here, because sex and mental health really just kind of go hand in hand, and we really don't think about it that much. But I digress. Xanet, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what made you, write a book about sex?
Well, first of all, thank you, Keegan, for having me on this show. I'm excited to talk about this topic. I'm always excited when somebody wants to talk about this topic because I think, just like you, I think it's such an important topic, especially in the area of mental health. And I really want to help all of your listeners learn how to improve their love life, which to me is a very, very important topic. How did I write a book about sex? It's such a great question. So if you knew me when I was like in my teens and 20s, you would be shocked that I would be writing a book about sex or have anything to do with it, because I'm the person who really kind of hated sex. I had some very shameful experiences. So there is such a thing as shame trauma. Trauma shows up in a lot of different, ways, but shame is one of them. A lot of like shameful experiences when I was really young, like really little, and like kind of, innocent things like getting caught playing doctor with my friend Josephine in 7th grade. Sorry, not 7th grade. When I was 7 years old in 1st grade.
Whoa. Okay.
Seventh grade would have been a little different experience. A little
expected by that point.
I know. And then she was my best friend, and she was from England, and she moved away the next year. And first of all, I got in a lot of trouble from my mom when her mom walked in on us. And then I thought for years that the reason she moved away was because I was a bad person because of what happened, right? So those types of experiences, I had a little bit of a close relationship with my, dog when I was like 7, 8 years old, the same time, right? And all of those experiences made me feel like sex wasn't safe and my body wasn't a safe place to be. And, even when my dog Lucky and I write about all of this in my book, so I have no shame talking about it, but even when my dog Lucky and I had a little bit too close of a relationship, which, dogs like to sniff and lick, and it felt good on a 7-year-old body, but I was really scared that my mom would find out, right? Because I already had been socialized. I already been shamed from my very first experience. And that just stuck with me. Like it stuck with me in my body. It made me feel disconnected from my body. And that anxiety just compounded with everything. And so sex was just very anxious for me, and it was painful. When I actually started having sex, my body was like, this isn't safe. This isn't safe. And it never got any better. But I was married at 24, which is very, very young, especially these days for many people. And there was a lot of drama. I ended up having my two children, and I was done by the time I was 28. And then I just kind of closed up shop because there was a lot of trauma and drama around sex. And I was a healthcare lawyer. My husband was a lawyer, and we lived in New York City. And it was just like, yeah, it's easier not to talk about this. It's easier not to do this.
Uh-huh.
Because it was very uncomfortable for me. Like even, anytime it came up, there would be tears and, bad, right?
Yeah,
Bad,
that's not
uncomfortable, shameful. I felt broken. So it was just easier. And we do this all the time, right? It was easier for me just to repress all of that, any type of sexual energy or drive I had. And I repressed it for like 26 years. I was in this marriage. I know, for 26 years.
What?
Call me crazy, right?
Oh, that would drive someone crazy.
Talk about retrieving sanity.
Yeah.
Right? So it was a logical thing to do, but really what happened was two things. One is, and I see this all the time because I'm a sex and intimacy coach, and I specifically work mostly with couples and some women. When the sex starts falling apart, the relationship started falling apart as well. We really didn't have any intimacy. We didn't have the healthiest relationship to begin with. I didn't know that then. I was 24 years old. I'm like, what the hell do you know when you're 24 years old, right?
Nothing,
right?
Nothing.
24-year-olds should not get married.
No.
Sorry. That's what I took away from it. But the relationship really started falling apart, and we stayed together we were great parents. We were a great family unit. We stayed together for that. But there was no intimacy, no touching. We slept in separate bedrooms. I mean, it was, I know. And I didn't really think I was missing anything, Keegan, because it never felt good for me. I never had an orgasm. Like my friends talked about it, but I didn't know what they were talking about. So eventually, when I turned 50 and my second son had gone off to college, we separated. And we had to, right? Like, maybe, no, big yay,
okay.
Big yay. It was like, we're both lawyers. We just sat down, we took out a legal pad, we started writing down, you get this, I get this. Literally, that's what that conversation.
Fair enough.
A little heartless in my a little heartless conversation, but that's what lawyers do.
Yeah, it kind of feels like the beginning. Well, I mean, it feels like it was on par,
Was.
Yeah.
It was totally on par. But here's the thing, like, I'm living in New York City, I'm 50 years old, I'm fairly attractive. I'm definitely like a relationship person. I enjoy being with people. I enjoy relationships. And I took this hard look at myself and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to have to go get on some dating sites. And I'm going to have to say, like, I'm this awesome woman. I'm really smart. I have my own business. At that point, I did have my own healthcare consulting company. But I just hate sex. That's the problem. Do you want to date me? Right. And that wasn't going to fly. So it really forced me. I had never done therapy, or I'd started doing therapy at the end of my marriage. Right. And that was probably the first time I started actually, as we do in therapy, actually saying out loud, I'm not happy in this marriage. Yeah. And then I was like, I gotta do something about this. And it forced me to take a really hard look at me and who I was and my background and my history and the shame, trauma, I didn't even have a name for it, that I experienced, as a child, and some of the physical manifestations of being so disconnected from my body. And that was the beginning. I was 50 years old at the time. So I'm 65 now. It's been a 15-year journey. And it still continues, right?
Yeah.
Of course, right? But that was the beginning of the healing journey for me. And I really took a deep dive. I got involved in Tantra, which was my doorway into sexuality. And it was very safe because there was no focus on outcomes or goals. There was just a focus on like breathing and being in your body and having, this being treated as a goddess. I mean, who doesn't want to be treated like a goddess, right?
Yeah.
Worshipped like a goddess. And it was just a very like safe space, at least for me. I know some people haven't had safety around Tantra, but for me it was a very safe space to begin to start to explore my sexuality. And I went through all of these trainings, and eventually I moved to California because, you know, if you want to study sex, you really kind of, at that time, you had to go to California where all the Tantra teachers are and the sex coaches are, and all the trainings, right? Yeah. And then, you know, I'm a very curious person. I'm very like education focused. So I just wanted to know more. You know, I wanted to understand physiology. I wanted to understand psychology. So I just took one training after another, till I felt like I had like enough tools in my tool belt that I could actually like make a mark in the world. Not like I'm a perfectionist or anything.
I mean, I don't think you'd have to be a perfectionist or anything just to crave knowledge. I mean, I was that weird kid in school that was like, hey, I got a lot of questions. And the teacher was like, just wait till you get to college. You know, it's awesome that you were able to do those kind of things, but you did so much because I guess once you opened that doorway, you found that there was a whole lot more than just sex, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was what was so, you know, fascinating for me, and why I just got so like interested in it, because sexuality was the doorway to huge growth and huge personal transformation, right? In every way, from who I was and what I wanted in life, what I wanted to do with my life. When I was a healthcare lawyer, right? And then all of a sudden, and it, you know, it was fine. I had my own business. It was very successful, but there was an empty feeling. There was like, is this really all there is? Like, is this really all that life has to give? You know? And the answer was like, no, like this is what you're supposed to do. Like, you went through all of that pain for 26 years, more than that, right? So that you can help other people. You can help other women who are sexually shut down and confused. And then eventually, you know, you can help other couples. But, you know, so yes, I'm a wounded healer, like so many healers are. No surprise. But it really did, you know, it really cast a whole different light on the importance of like, what is intimacy? I really never had that, you know, like, what is it to really be intimate, to be vulnerable? Vulnerability, super, super scary place to be, right? Still a really scary place to be. But when you open yourself up, you start to open yourself up, you are very vulnerable. So there were so many lessons and ways in which I changed as a person, that were like, I don't think I even changed my name. I hardly ever say that, but I did. Like, this is not my given name. My given name is Janet. But at a training I went to, one of my first trainings, I had a lover at that time he was from Australia, and he called me Xanet because very, very sexy Australian accent. Xanet. And so I went to this training, and they were like, well, you can have whatever name you want. And I'm like, well, let's just try Xanet and see how it lands. And we'll spell it with an X because I'm at a sex training. It's true.
Yes, I love it.
It's true, but it was very powerful. Name changes are very powerful, right? It was really part of the huge transformation that I went through. The family freaked out because all of a sudden mom had a different name, my brother in particular. Honestly, it wasn't until this year that he actually said, okay, I'm going to start calling you Xanet 15 years later.
Wow.
But yeah. So it was a huge transformation. I really became like, there was like the pre-Xanet stage and then the post-Xanet stage. And they were very, very different people in many ways, some ways, but in certain ways, they were very, very different people.
Well, yeah. That is for sure. I don't know if I've ever actually said this on my own podcast, but Keegan is actually my middle name. So I actually go by my middle name after I got out of rehab from my 10-year battle with alcoholism. So yay. Because I was like, Keegan it's my middle name. I've always liked it a little bit more than Tanner. And so I was like, yeah, and it's Irish and I like my Irish roots, so I was like, I'll roll with it. And same kind of thing happened. A lot of my family was like, "What do we call you? Do we call you Tanner or Keegan?" And I was like, "Either one. It doesn't really matter. They're both my name." But for you, it was something entirely different. You actually got to mold
I
your
know.
name. You got to essentially remake yourself, like through and through. That's powerful stuff.
It was very powerful. It was a total remake of who I am, how
Mm-hmm.
I dressed, how I
Mm.
talked, what I
Ah.
believed. Some of my beliefs changed.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
became a lot softer. I mean,
Uh huh.
a lot more feminine. I'm a lawyer. I'm a New
Yeah.
York City lawyer. I'm like da 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 da.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Exactly. And I really started just to feel these changes happening in my body, which I think is what always happens when you start going through some sort of major personal transformation and growth, right? Like
Yeah.
you really start to significantly change, and it was
Yeah.
for the good. It was for a good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was for an astoundingly good reason. And I mean, it's just one of those things too where you change your name and it's again, it goes right back to that shame almost because it's like Janet was shamed in sex and things for being herself, but Janae is empowered by sex and things by being herself.
I never really thought about it that way, but it's absolutely right. That is that there you're probably right. That was probably a huge part of it, of like having to escape that identity, the mother, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I'm saying, the mother, the wife, the shamed person, to
Mm-hmm.
escape that identity. And I don't think I could have done it with my old name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
interesting.
yeah, names just are something that define us to a point, and we don't really get to choose that.
No,
But you
right.
chose it, and
I did.
so you rewrote your life after that. That is awesome. So, did you change your name after you found the Tantra stuff? Was it after all that, or was it a little bit before?
No, no, it was after.
Okay.
It was at a training. I had already done I had done I think I had done a tantra training, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a tantra training. I've done a lot of trainings. And
Mm.
then I was living in California. I had moved to California. My mom had passed away. And she had dementia, so it was a blessing.
No.
I
Yeah.
decided just to like take a year off, which I've never done. I mean,
Oh.
literally, like when I my child was first born, my first kid was born, and I was
Mm-hmm.
a lobbyist on Capitol Hill, and we had
Oh.
a lobbying day 4 weeks after I gave birth. That child was with me nursing on Capitol Hill, right? So I never took time off, really, like something like that. But I decided to take a year off because I really needed to like figure out what the hell I was going to do. I did
Mm-hmm.
it. I didn't want to keep on working, doing what I was doing. I knew I needed to make a shift, and I didn't know what that was like.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was going to be in this area. And so, no, I did my first training, which was sexological bodywork training, which is it was an amazing training program. And it was at
Mm-hmm.
that training where they said, "What's your name?" And I was like, "We're going to try
Cool.
Sinead and see how that
Yeah.
sticks."
I I love that because it really does kind of paint that picture that subconsciously you were probably hating that name for a while, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And
100%.
then you had that boyfriend or lover, whatever we want to call him, just come along and just jokingly call you that. And then I think your subconscious just latched onto it, been like, oh, that's directed towards me. I can have another name. And then you got permission from some other people to rename yourself. I
I
think that's
did.
awesome. We tend to kind of build a cage with the expectations of others, and that's kind of what shame is, right?
Yeah.
They shame us into getting to be comfortable with what they're comfortable with.
Right.
And so you got permission to step out of that cage and just say, yeah, nah, I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't easy, but it took. I mean, I guess in general, I've always been a risk taker in life,
Mm-hmm.
and I took a big risk. I left all of my friends, all my families, my kids who were all on the East
Mm-hmm.
Coast. I didn't know
Yeah.
anybody in California, and decided to go to California,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, but it was definitely taking a big step. And let's talk about shame for a moment, because when
Yeah.
you started this podcast, you said like sex is something we should be talking about, but it's sometimes hard to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, because there's a lot of shame associated with sex,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And that is like just exactly as you said, that's socialized into us from very, very early on.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've been like so, I did a lot of podcasting in 2018 when
Uh-huh.
my first book came out,
Okay.
but the environment was so different than it is now. Like, it was hard to get on podcasts,
Mm.
and radio, really, and radio
Uh-huh.
shows, right? But
Yeah.
like, it's very different right now, which is great, right? It means that people are really understanding this is an important subject that we need to be talking about,
Yeah.
that pleasure is important, that sex is
Mm-hmm.
important for our mental health and our physical health.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the layer that holds us back from being able to really have these conversations is shame.
Yeah. Yeah. It it really is. And I never really understood how much shame played a part in my life until I spoke to one of my guests, and her name was Emma Lyons. And she just obliterated what I thought shame was and wasn't, And ever since that conversation, I've been rethinking everything about my life and society norms and stuff, and how much of it is actually shamed. It's just in a guise of like safety, or just like something, anything. It's really weird. And sex is one of those things that's like behind the biggest, blackest taboo door. It's like, if you want to go in there, you have to follow these rules, and if you don't, you're out.
That's
And
right. You're
and it
weird, you're
yeah.
kinky, you're freaky,
Yeah.
whatever, right? It's so true. So, and I think that's why, like, in the way, I mean, right? The way we start to get over shame
Hmm.
is how we get empower ourselves, is by talking about it, by
Yeah.
normalizing it, by like, other people saying, "Oh my God, I had a dog that did that to me too. I'm not the
Hmm.
only person."
Yeah.
Right? Or, I also had a horrible childhood, or I also had,
Hmm.
sexual trauma that I've been afraid to talk about.
Yeah.
So talking about it and normalizing it is the way in which it starts to become more acceptable.
Hmm.
And I think that's so important. And that's what really holds us back. Honestly, like, I have couples, I'm pointing because I'm in my office. I have couples sitting on my couch, right? They've been
Huh.
married for 30 years, 45 years, who knows? They come
Mm.
in and they're like, Sinead, we've never really been able to talk about sex for 35 years. Yes, it's true. It's insane. I mean, but it happens all the time, Keegan. I'm
Yeah.
swear to you, it happens all the time.
Yeah. And I think I can. It's crazy to me in some sense, but that's because I'm kind of more open to talking about it with my wife. But don't get me wrong, it takes time to get there to that point whenever you come from a shamed background, or something of a shamed or trauma background of
Right.
sorts too. Shame and trauma sometimes go hand in hand with each other.
Totally.
And we don't get to choose our traumas, really. So a lot of people really kind of get shamed into not talking about sex,
Yeah.
And so we kind of fail, I think, in middle school and high school a lot with sex ed, because that's a lot of more just like trying to scare people away from pregnancy kind of stuff, and it's not really teaching anything.
Not at all. Really not at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you're the person that people should talk to if they're trying to figure out what sex is and how it's actually good for a person and their mental health, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, because we have a really very narrow definition of what sex is, um,
Hmm.
in our culture. We do.
Well, well, I mean, normally, I mean, I'm really curious, like, what other definition of sex is there? Because you did mention intimacy earlier, and that's a big thing, but
It is.
that's not necessarily sex, so is it?
No, it's not. So you want to talk about sex? Let's talk about sex for a moment.
Okay.
So most people, when I ask them, how do you define sex?
Mm-hmm.
They basically say, we have intercourse. We call it in the sex therapy world, penis and vagina sex,
Mm-hmm.
PIV, right? That's how they define sex.
Mm-hmm.
And if that doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
then they haven't had successful sex, right? And they're looking for that outcome.
Oh.
If we
Oh.
if that doesn't happen, then I'm not
Mm.
satisfied. If that doesn't happen, I haven't satisfied my partner. If that doesn't happen, I've, let her down or I've let him down,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um,
Oh.
and that's a very narrow definition, right? That's just like,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
It's one part of our anatomy. I'm not saying it's not an important part of our anatomy, but it's only one part of our anatomy. And
Yeah.
so, and that really limits us
Mm-hmm.
because then we can't say, I say that
Uh-huh.
any type of erotic experience is sex.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm sexting with my partner, but we're on opposite sides of the country, in
Uh-huh.
my view, we're kind of having sex. If we're having this hot makeout session and that's all we're doing, we're
Mm-hmm.
having a sexual interaction, right? So if
Yeah.
you can start to really broaden the definition of sex,
Mm-hmm.
it A, opens up all of these possibilities, and B,
Mm-hmm.
it takes all of the expectations and goals off the table because that holds
Mm.
people back. It really holds people back.
Yeah, that is for sure. Whenever you started talking about it, I was like, "Oh, okay, that." Because my brain also was like, "Well, sex could also be like, are you male? Are you female?" And we're
Mm.
not talking about that kind of sex, but
Mm-mm.
I mean, we could be in a sense. I don't know. That's a totally different ballpark, but
Yeah, different
um,
conversation. But yeah, it's your gender identity and all that. Yeah,
mhm.
for sure.
Yeah, because that can play into his sexuality, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
and like you were saying, though, whenever we're playing by those expectations, if we don't meet them, then we can either build resentments towards our partner or ourselves really quick, right?
Right, right. We feel like a failure
Mm-hmm.
or we feel pressure, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people
Oh.
feel like pressure to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't make for a good experience because now, like, you're in your head thinking about it and worrying about it as opposed to being in the experience of being
Mm-hmm.
in your body, right? So being on the journey rather than worrying about like where are we going? Where do we have to get to
so,
for this to be
so
successful?
yeah. For some reason, my brain just decided to play like for some reason that like it's a long road trip and sex is like the entire journey, but the kid is like in the minivan just like, are we there yet, are we there yet? And
Right.
it's
Exactly. That's
and
how it plays out.
yeah, and it's I would imagine that it's probably the guy that's pushing that, are we there yet? And it's usually the female driving the van or whatever going like, shut up, well, we're getting there. But that's
Yes,
just
I think that's probably true most of the time.
so how do we stop trying to how do we redefine that?
Yeah, we redefine it. We start having conversations.
Mhm.
We start talking about like, oh, we're having like some sort of, interaction tonight. What do we want it to look like? Does it
Mm.
have to end someplace? Can it just be like, we'll see what happens?
Mhm.
Can it be that, we're just going to give each other sensual massages and see how that feels, right?
Mhm.
So it's really forcing a conversation to happen and then to be vulnerable with each other and say, like, I know when you're faking it. Or I know when you feel this pressure to perform, or
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
a lot of couples don't have those conversations. When they
Mhm.
start having the conversations, the walls come down and they're both like, oh my God, thank God.
Yeah.
I've been feeling all of this pressure all of these years. Um, that's not helpful.
Mhm.
Right. So it really is about starting to, open up the conversation and
Mhm.
really taking a hard look at what we're actually really doing and whether it's actually serving us and whether our needs are getting met and whether,
Mhm.
we're able to ask for what we want and have those types of conversations.
Yeah. Ooh, I think I kind of heard self-advocacy in there. I think one of the questions that I kind of have is for the people that, because you said bringing down the walls, right, to create that intimacy. Well, whenever we're dealing with sex and intimacy, usually we're naked. And so whenever we're naked, a lot of people feel really vulnerable, like you were saying before. So a lot of people probably maybe don't feel very safe with their own self. Maybe that's part of the problem that kind of goes on. They're naked and they don't want the other person to see them naked or something along those lines, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, body shame and body image issues is a huge piece for both women and men, right? So that's
Mm-hmm.
one of the shame issues that we have, that we don't like the way our body looks and we can't accept our body. And how could my partner possibly like this body that
Mm-hmm.
I having a lot of issues with, right?
Mm, yeah.
So I think that is definitely, a huge piece. But when we talk about vulnerability, right? So yes,
Mm-hmm.
in order to really have an amazing sexual experience, you have to be very, very vulnerable and open. You
Mm-hmm.
can have sex and not be vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
more just like routine, quickies.
Mm-hmm.
But the foundation underneath a sexual relationship, a successful uh, sexual relationship, is the intimacy piece. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what's important. And I think that, the vast majority of couples who are really struggling with their sexual relationship, their
Mm-hmm.
sex life,
Yeah.
they're really struggling with their emotional intimacy and their emotional connection. That's the underpinning, generally speaking. You
Uh-huh.
know, problems in your sex life is generally a symptom of
Mm-hmm.
relationship issues, and relationship issues go to safety, and they go
Mm-hmm.
to vulnerability, and they go to the resentment that's been built up for not being able to repair conflicts all these years.
Mm-hmm.
So I always work and start with that whole issue of emotional safety and
Uh-huh.
emotional connection, because right, when you feel emotionally safe with your partner, you can be more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? If I feel emotionally safe with my partner and I know they're not going to use sex to use sex
Mm-hmm.
against me by weaponizing it, which a lot of people do,
Uh-huh. Unfortunately.
right? Or shame me,
Mm-hmm.
um, or 100 other ways in which sex can become a weapon,
Uh,
then I feel like I can be totally vulnerable and feel comfortable, being
mm-hmm.
naked and opening myself up in different ways, and being, an avid explorer.
Huh. So, does someone need to be comfortable with their body before they can really explore someone else, per se?
Necessarily, I mean, body image issues, like I said, it's a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
There are ways in which you can support your partner around that, right?
Oh.
Like, not shaming them,
Yeah.
not saying, "Oh, honey, it looks like you put a couple of pounds on," right?
No, don't do that.
And just like really, it's easier often to
Mm-hmm.
accept somebody else's body than it is to accept our body, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we think about, like, it's not what's on the outside, it's what's on the inside, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, telling your partner, like, "Oh, like, you look great, I love your butt, I love the way your breasts look," giving your partner compliments about their body really
Mm-hmm.
helps to make the person who's having issues with their body image, like, settles them down, and like, "Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, she really likes, my little middle, and finds that it's nice and fluffy, and she can, like, put her hand in it and grab it. Cool."
Uh, and whenever people start getting comfortable with their partner to that level, or getting their partner comfortable with themselves and stuff, that's whenever we can start being more intimate, right? Because we have to start kind of breaking that down at the same time, I guess. Because intimacy, you said, was one of the things that we really need to kind of work on in
Right,
relationships, and it doesn't necessarily have to be sex,
right,
but
for sure.
um how would you suggest people start to build that intimacy to get to that point of close off, because that doesn't have to be foreplay necessarily either, right?
No. Well, I think one of the things that's really helpful is for you to understand that there are different like intimacy styles. I actually, and this is a great gift, and this is what I'm gonna. All of you all who are listening, you're gonna go to my website and take your test, which is called the intimacy equation formula,
Okay.
because there's lots of different ways in which we show up in an intimacy way. Some people are more heart based. Some people are more like kind of acts of service based. I'm not really talking about love languages, but it's like kind of like a little bit of love languages. Some
Yeah.
people are more like adventuresome, that they really want to do something, right? That's how they express intimacy with their partner. And some people are more really focused on trust. Like
Yeah.
that's really important. So there's lots of different ways. So I think one of the things is to start to understand, and this was a whole lot of my journey, start to understand, how do I express intimacy in a relationship? Like, how do I receive it? What do I need from my partner? How do I give it? And then understanding how we connect together, right? Like, if one person is really focused on trust and the other one is really focused on adventure, like, how does that work? I want to like, jump out of an airplane and you're like, oh my God, we can't do that, right? So so sort of learning how they feed each other, right? So I think that's important to understand like your intimacy type. And then I think the second part is, or intimacy equation, I think the second part of this, Keegan, is it also, by the way, helps to start the conversation, because a lot of times people will say like, well, how do we begin? And I'm like, well, why don't you start a conversation by like taking a fun little quiz that's animated, and then like have your partner, and then you can, get it going, right? Starting is always sometimes the hardest thing. And then I think it's really around creating, like starting to create emotional connection and emotional safety. And I'm a big believer that our eyes are the way in which we express emotions. It's one of the ways in which we express emotion. So if you come work with me, you're going to spend some fair amount of time in eye contact with your partner doing different exercises, right? Or, just starting to express some feelings. And it's amazing when I get two people and I sit them together, and I know this sounds super woo-woo crazy, but, and I have them look in each other's eyes and go through a little bit of some communication exercises, how the tears just start flowing, like people start really softening and the walls start coming down, right? Why? Because let's break down intimacy. Into me see. That's how I discuss intimacy, right? So what does that mean? It means that I'm totally like, I'm allowing you to see who I am, all of my good sides, all of my shit, I can say that, right? All of my stuff, all of the garbage that I bring into a relationship, all of my wounds. And that level of vulnerability creates a tremendous amount of connection and safety. And in that safety, you can start to open yourself up to your partner sexually. That's how it works in my world.
Okay. That's awesome. So one thing that I kind of caught right at the end there was maybe that's how people work through their traumas too with sex whenever it comes to that. Is that right? Because the opposite of trauma is, well, healing, or rather safety in a sense, right?
Yeah. Empowerment too, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess really those two kind of go in the same link with building up your partner, right?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt that if you've had sexual trauma or any type of trauma, right? Because we know that any type of trauma impacts safety, and safety impacts your sex life. Like, one of the first things we always try to do, of course, is to help a person create safety in their body, right? Learn how to regulate, how to self regulate, how to regulate their nervous system, how to feel safe in their body, because as we know, people with trauma generally don't feel safe in their body, right?
No.
So it takes a lot of self work here, to be able to create that safety in your body, where then, despite the fact that your partner is the best person in the world and they are not the person who hurt you or raped you or assaulted you or abused you, right? Your body doesn't know the difference. Your body still has that like somatic experience of like, oh my God, somebody's coming to touch me and it's not safe, right? So absolutely. And you know, I'm a somatic experiencing trauma practitioner and an SE. We spend a lot of time helping people learn how to regulate their nervous system, how to go from a very activated sympathetic state to a more neutral, to a more regulated parasympathetic state in their nervous system. So that's a very important component when you're working with trauma.
Okay. So could someone sit there and do that kind of work before getting intimate with their partner, if that's what it takes to get them to feel safe enough? But it's almost the opposite, right? Because sex is usually ramping everything up.
Yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of work with couples who, one of whom has sexual trauma. It's a challenging dynamic at times, right? Again, depending upon how it resonates in that person, how resilient they are, how much it shows up during sex. Sometimes it doesn't really show up much. Sometimes it's all that they can think about. And so it's a long-term is what I would say. It's very, very, just like any type of trauma work is, it's very titrated. It's very slow. It's having to repeat it over and over and over again. So your body, you know, and then releasing the trauma that's in your body as well. Right. Yeah. So, you know, so one of the things that I teach when I work with couples and I do, retreats, private retreats, I teach different ways of touch, 4 different ways of touch. And one of the ways of touch is, I coordinated it to the different earth elements. So I talk about earth touch, right? Which is like being held. And so for a lot of people with trauma, slowing down is so important. Like that's one of the ways to create safety. It's also the way in which you actually can have a better sex life, is to slow everything down. But, you know, slowing down creates safety because usually their body has this experience of something coming at them very, very fast and they having no control over it, right? So earth touch is often a way in which, you know, you can start to settle your nervous system when your partner just hugs you and holds you and there's stillness, right? And there's, you know, like lots of different ways that you can do that. And I teach that. So that is a way in which, you know, for many people, and again, typically they have to go slow and they often have to be in control of the sexual situation. Gotcha. They have to be in control of the pace. They may have to be on top, right? They control when penetration happens. They just have to be in control. That's another way to be able to feel safe.
Yeah, flipping the script and giving them the empowerment.
Totally.
That
they didn't have, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Real quick, people can find you over at How to Improve what?
HowToImproveMyLoveLife.com. How to improve my love life, not your love life, mylovelife.com.
Awesome. For everyone out there, it will be in the episode description. And that's one of those things, is that you also said we need to be able to release that trauma. And I mean, honestly, that sounds kind of like an orgasm to me, you know, just an ultimate release. But not everyone really understands what that is, right?
So what happens with trauma is, you know, the energy gets trapped in your body. So if, you know, somebody attacked you and you were not able to fight off that attack and you sort of went into a freeze, that energy gets stuck, basically gets stuck in the body. And through the somatic experiencing process, which is the one that I'm trained in and familiar with, what we do is we very gradually start to like get in contact with a little bit of that sensation and then sort of watch the body and allow it to unwind slowly. And so the release of energy can happen in a lot of different ways. Yeah,
Okay.
but it's all like autonomic. So it can happen from sometimes people will shake. So you'll see them starting to shake. That's release of energy. Sometimes they get really hot. You can see their face get really hot. Sometimes they get the chills and they get really cold. Sometimes there's yawning, like big. Sometimes I've sat with clients and they're just constantly yawning, right? And that's a big release of the trauma in the body. So that's one of the ways in which the body starts to release the trapped energy from the trauma. And that starts to free up the body. So the body begins to know, okay, I can sort of take a step in that direction and not have that same experience. Yeah.
Okay.
Powerful work.
Yeah, I love that. And you know what's crazy is that I went through a period myself where I was unable to yawn for about 5 or 6 years. Yeah, that was the weirdest thing, like being able to start having a yawn and then it just completely cuts off. It was the weirdest thing.
I've actually had that experience.
Yeah.
I had that experience for a period of time when I was very activated in a relationship with somebody, as a matter of fact. And I couldn't sleep. And I couldn't yawn. And it drove me crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, it was nuts. The first time I had a yawn again was in therapy.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I'm really glad you brought that up because I didn't realize that was a release of trauma right there. So
yeah, and also like you know, yawning is like a vagus nerve activation as well, right? Like that is of course in the parasympathetic part of the nervous system. But absolutely, yes, I can completely relate to that. It's horrible. It is.
I don't wish that on anyone.
Oh.
At one point, I was like, I wish there was a yawn coach or something, someone to tell me why I can't yawn. But now I guess I kind of know why.
Yeah.
Real quick, we are getting near the end of this episode, which really sucks because this is an awesome episode. And I just got to ask, do you think we could see you on in the future again at some point?
We definitely can because, you know, Keegan, I have a new book that's coming out in March 4th. It's called the Sex and Intimacy Repair Kit, How to Enhance Communication and Create a Lifetime of Passionate Intimacy. So I would love to come back, and it's actually pre-orderable now. You can find all that information if you go to that website. But I'd love to come back and talk about that as well. There's some really great stuff in that book.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that because this has been an awesome and empowering episode. But I've got to ask if you want to play our quick game show real quick.
Okay. I'm all in. I'm all in.
All right, Xanet. So this game show segment is called The Pleasure Principle Quickfire. No pun intended, I guess. So I'm going to read a quickfire prompt. And Xanet, I just need you to give me a 1 to 3 word answer followed by a 1-sentence explanation of why you said that.
Okay. We'll give it a shot.
All right, here we go. What's the quickest way to reconnect to your body?
Take a breath.
Take a breath. All right. What's the explanation for that?
The more you breathe, the more you feel.
Ooh, dude, I love that. All right. What about, is painful sex inevitable after trauma?
It's not inevitable. Well, some people, I don't know if I can do this in a sentence. Let's see. It's not inevitable. Everybody responds to trauma in a different way. It's not inevitable.
Gotcha. Okay. I love that. What about one essential key to great foreplay?
Slow down. So when you slow down, you know, you get to be much more present in your body and present with your partner, and you get to feel your own sensations.
Okay. I think I just got to slow down in general with everything I do. What's more important, orgasm or pleasure?
Pleasure.
Pleasure?
Orgasm is amazing, but if you make that a goal, it's going to make you crazy at some point because you're going to miss all of the nuances of the pleasure in your body.
Ooh, okay. I'll have to keep that in mind too. All right. What about one activity to increase? I'm going to get roasted for saying this, but libido.
Libido.
Ah.
Oh, one activity to increase libido. Okay. Depends whether it's a woman or man, but I would say like do a sexy dance.
Somatic dance? Somatic sexy dance?
Sexy dance with yourself in front of a mirror with your partner.
Okay.
Not touching, like just feel the energy between the two.
Yeah. That's going to be pretty fun to try. All right. True or false? You need a partner to practice Tantra.
No, that's totally false.
False?
Yeah, Tantra can be done solo. Absolutely. In fact, there are books on solo Tantra.
I think that we need to dive into Tantra maybe a little bit more next episode. Too.
Okay.
Because, like I said, we've got a ton of rabbit hole trains to follow on this one. All right. What does the body need to feel safe?
What does it need to feel safe? It needs to know that it will be respected.
Okay.
Yeah.
It needs to know that it'll be respected.
Be respected.
Okay. I think the explanation on that isn't really needed,
Yeah.
What about the biggest barrier to intimacy?
The biggest barrier to intimacy is a lack of emotional connection and not feeling emotionally safe.
Oof. Oh, yeah. Okay. Right there too. And then last one for this evening, better name for sexless marriage.
Better name for a sexless marriage. Sexually challenged. I don't know. That's a hard one, Keegan. What do you think the answer should be?
Better name for a sexless marriage. What about rock, paper, scissors?
I like it.
All right. So, Xanet, thank you for playing our game, The Pleasure Principle Quickfire. And because you've delighted us with your astounding knowledge of all things pleasure, we have decided to bestow upon you the honorary title of the Oracle of Embodied Delight.
I love that.
Well, thank you for playing our little game show with us. And I got one last question, if you don't mind.
Of course.
All right. Xanet, the name of this podcast is Retrieving Sanity, and we explore how all facets of living life impact mental health. Looking at the incredible motley adventures of your life, what does retrieving sanity personally mean to you today? And what's one practice or perspective you believe is crucial for anyone on that journey?
Oh my God. Okay. That's a big question.
That's a big question.
That's a really big question. Okay. What do I do on a daily basis to maintain my mental health? Well, one of the things that I do that's super powerful and helpful for me is I do a nervous system meditation every night before I go to bed, which I love because it really allows me to yawn and relax because I need to, I'm a New Yorker. I need to bring things down. It's easy for me to get very like hyper up and not be able to sleep. And sleep is very important for mental health, right? So that is something that I highly recommend.
Okay. What is there a specific one that you do? I haven't heard of it.
Yes. So there's this woman on YouTube. If you look up nervous system reset or nervous system meditation, there's this woman on YouTube. Her name is Karen Hope. And she does this beautiful one. Like I just hear her voice and I start relaxing and yawning. And it's just a beautiful nervous system reset. And I do it. She has a couple of different ones. And I do it, religiously. Tapping also, like EFT tapping is another thing that I do as well. And I do like the sleep tap usually. There's one that's about shutting your brain off, like because you're thinking about, which my brain does. It's like, oh, I got to do this. I got to do that tomorrow. And I can't sleep. So I just really try to do things to really settle my nervous system because I know I know that for me, and I think for everybody, when your nervous system is settled, you can sleep better. You know, the rest and digest, your digestion is better. And you just wake up more clear-headed in the morning. So
Yeah.
that's how I retrieve my sanity, Keegan.
Awesome. I love that, Xanet. That is way too good, because we've talked about meditation, we've talked about all that kind of stuff, and I mean, I think we're just tying it all up into one big old loop. Xanet, I just gotta say thank you very much for being on Retrieving Sanity tonight, because this has been an amazing conversation. I can't wait to have you on again, because you're right, we need to have these kind of conversations to help people break that shame barrier, delete everything that they think they know about sex and intimacy, because they're probably wrong, because it doesn't have to be fast. What? Question mark? So
Slow is better.
slow is better.
I just want to tell everybody, this is a strong belief I have, that pleasure is your birthright. That you were born to have pleasure, that you should be having pleasure, and if you're not, you should do something about it. Just don't accept, like I did for 30 years, that my body couldn't give me pleasure. Like, that's just not true. No matter what you've been through, right, it is available for you in some form or another. And if you can't access it, go find somebody who can help you.
Yeah. Oof, that is powerful. I thank you very much for that astounding message, because I know some people out there, including myself, probably have to hear that. So, everyone out there, thank you for listening to Retrieving Sanity on WDJY 99.1 FM. And as always, if you've got a mental health crisis, you can dial 988. If you're part of the LGBTQ plus community, you can dial the Trevor Project up in Canada. But remember, you've got to love yourself. Try to love others if you can, but you've got to love yourself first. We will see y'all next week. With that being said, much love. Schlad.